All right, we'll get started here. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to hear about steps cities can take to grow and improve their local solar markets. My name is Nick Kaza, and I work on energy and sustainability programs at the National League of Cities. I'm glad that you're all able to join us for today's webinar. We have several great speakers, but before I introduce them, I'd like to just review some key webinar details. This webinar is being recorded. All attendees are muted and will be muted throughout the webinar. If you do have any questions, please submit them through the chat function on the GoToWebinar side panel. If you're unable to use the chat function, you can also email me at kaza@nlc.org, and I will try and track those throughout the webinar so we can have a brief Q&A session at the end. We'll take a quick look at the agenda here. I'll kick off our presentation with just a quick overview of SoleSmart, a national designation and technical assistance program for local governments. We'll then hear from Emma Searson, who's with Environment America. Emma will introduce some of Environment America's initiatives, including a Mayors for Solar Energy campaign. We'll then hear from some representatives from local government. Barb Jackson from the Abita Committee for Sustainable Energy in Abita Springs will talk. Then we'll hear from Nicole Wolf and Doug Harvey, West Palm Beach, Florida. And then finally, the Mayor of Park Forest, Illinois, John Ostenberg, and Edith Macra, the Director of Environmental Initiatives at the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, will share some of their thoughts. So real quick about SoleSmart. SoleSmart is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy till 2020. Its goal is to designate at least 300 communities as a SoleSmart bronze, silver, or gold community. The program itself is divided into two program areas. One side is the designation that verifies cities have solar-friendly processes and awards the bronze, silver, or gold designation. The other side provides technical assistance to cities to help them achieve the minimum level of designation or work towards a higher level of designation. The SoleSmart team is made up of quite a few different organizations. Many of them have previous experience working with local governments, working on Department of Energy funded solar programs. The designation team is led by ICMA, and the technical assistance provider team is led by the Solar Foundation. We do have specific solar experts on the technical assistance side. Brooks Engineering basically wrote the book on the California solar permitting process. We have the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, who has quite a few different types of tools and analysis that they can perform for cities. The Regulatory Assistance Project is kind of a go-to source for utility engagement and regulations. And we also have the Electric Power Research Institute, which really dives into some of the technical and grid connection issues when it comes to solar energy. This is a photo of a few of our SoleSmart designees and a map of a location of them across the country. Currently, we have 192 designees. I know this slide says 189, but we've had a couple more this month. So we're sitting at 192 right now. And that means we're very close to 200, and hopefully we'll be able to celebrate 200 designees at some point in April. The designation structure for SoleSmart is a tiered structure. As I said, we have bronze, silver, and gold. For each one of those tiers, there's a certain level of actions that need to be completed called prereqs. For bronze, it's 3. For silver, it's 2, and for gold, it's 1. And then there's also a specific points threshold that we require cities and counties to meet when they're aiming to achieve their desired designation. We assess where communities are at based on a scorecard that really serves as kind of our baseline to see where how close to designation they are, and then also identifies the pathway for technical assistance providers. Taking a quick look at the SoleSmart categories, we have 8 categories. This is the brief example of each category with the number of credits and the possible points as well. permitting and planning, zoning, and development regulations are foundational categories. Those are certainly categories that local governments can have a positive influence in terms of creating and removing barriers for solar energy deployment. And then we have a couple of special focus categories as well. A couple of them look at engaging either the community or utilities, improving the inspection processes, talking to local banks, and creating new and unique financing incentives for solar credits like that. As I had mentioned, we use a SoleSmart Scorecard to get a baseline assessment and understand where communities are currently at. There's 82 specific credits within the SoleSmart Scorecard across these 8 different categories. Each of those credits has a points value that ranges from 5 to 20, and communities are awarded points based on credits that they have completed, and we verify those credits have been completed by reviewing documentation and other verification documents that are provided to our designation review team. As I said, one of the major components of SoleSmart is the Technical Assistance Program. This is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, so it's no cost to local governments. By the nature of the engagement, what we're really looking for is a little bit of staff time to help the community achieve designation. We're basically an additional staff member that can help you implement some of these processes and some of these goals, but we do need some support and buy-in from staff within the local government. Our TA definitely takes various forms depending on what the engagement looks like and what type of credit you're pursuing. We have templates and various other online resources that we can provide. We certainly do phone calls and webinars to help educate and walk through different process improvements. And then we can also do site visits, technical workshops, and training exercises as well, especially in terms of permitting and inspection best practices. SoleSmart benefits. Obviously, it's important to be recognized as a leading solar community. We have a website that's starting to build out great profiles of every community that is SoleSmart designated, quotes from local elected officials and city leaders. We also send communities a SoleSmart plaque that they're able to display in City Hall. It promotes local jobs, well-paying jobs, improves the economics of solar, both for homes and businesses that are looking to install it within the community. And then it can help communities achieve their climate and energy goals. We see a lot of communities right now that are either establishing clean energy goals or looking to reduce carbon emissions by a certain percentage by a certain year. And this is definitely one pathway that cities can take to help them achieve those goals by making solar energy easier to access and install for homes and businesses. So if you're interested in joining the SoleSmart process and becoming a SoleSmart community, you can contact me. We can have a little discussion to understand exactly what the needs are for your community and then identify the next steps and where we go from there. With that, I'm going to switch presentations and unmute Emma so she can talk a little bit about the initiatives from Environment America. Okay, awesome. Emma, you should be unmuted.
Indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, thanks. So again, I'm Emma Searson. I'm the Go Solar campaign coordinator with Environment America. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our Mayors for Solar Energy initiative and our new guide for cities. So next slide. Just to start out with a little bit of background about who we are. Environment America is a national federation of statewide, citizen-based advocacy organizations that work for a cleaner, greener, and healthier future. And we work on a variety of environmental issues, and clean energy is definitely a big one. So I work specifically on our Go Solar campaign and our Mayors for Solar Energy initiative. These efforts call on cities all across the country to lead in the transition to renewable energy. A lot of cities are already adopting solar energy in a big way, and we're encouraging them to both go deeper and encouraging more cities to start taking action. So we released our Mayors for Solar Energy letter, which a lot of folks on this call were a part of, earlier this week, as a part of our efforts to demonstrate the depth and breadth of support for this issue and to inspire more action at the local level. We also provide resources to help cities actually go solar, offering our own tools like this new 10 Ways Your City Can Go Solar resource that we'll talk about today. And we also work to connect cities with other programs and experts just like Nick and the SoleSmart team. So just 2 weeks ago, we released this new guide called 10 Ways Your City Can Go Solar, which is what I want to dive into. Next slide. So this is a pretty brief guide. If anyone's taken a look, you can see that it's meant to serve as a simplified list of steps that cities can take to really lead on solar energy. And we're happy to provide sources, additional information, and examples and expertise to help out with any one of these tactics that a city is interested in pursuing. So we've broken down tips here into 4 categories that are listed on the slide, and I want to highlight 3 of our recommendations that are geared toward using city government action to lead the way and to remove obstacles to solar energy in your community. And you can see on the bottom of the slide is a link where you can access the full guide, and you can also find all of my contact information if you're interested in learning more on that website. So next slide. One of the actions that we are really emphasizing is setting ambitious goals for solar energy in your community. Goals can help you institutionalize a shared vision of solar energy, and they help ensure that progress toward your goal becomes a part of every decision that your city makes. They also create buy-in in the community and help you get more citizens to actually take part. So there are a lot of different ways to set a solar energy goal. There's none that fits every community, which means there's plenty of opportunity to establish a custom one that really takes into account your city's prior progress, your motivations, and the challenges that your community faces. So when you're deciding what's going to be best for your community, these are just a couple things that we recommend considering. The first is that if your city is already working to achieve 100% renewable energy, that is great. And a solar specific goal can be an important part of your action plan to get there. San Diego is a great example of that. The city has one of the highest installed solar capacities in the country and is aiming to generate all of its electricity through renewables, and solar energy is a huge piece of that. But on the other hand, if your community hasn't made a commitment to 100% or isn't planning on doing so in the short term, an ambitious solar energy goal can still stand on its own. The next consideration is that solar commitments that apply to the entire community as opposed to only city operations really drive the most progress because they involve residents and businesses as well in your work. So we encourage cities to go that route when possible. Right now, we are working with the city of Abita Springs, Louisiana, to set that type of goal for their community, and you're going to get to hear more on that from Barb in a little bit. But keep in mind that some communities have also started with goals that just refer to city operations, and that can still send a powerful leadership message. Finally, there are a lot of different ways to actually measure your commitment. The key here is finding a balance between a number that's technical enough for you to measure and track it, like say megawatts of energy produced, but also that's easy for everybody to grasp and for your constituents to get behind and take part in, like say 20% of roofs having solar. So we've got examples of each and are always happy to work with cities to actually hone in on a number that works for them. Next slide. The next step that I want to highlight briefly here is installing solar projects on city properties like city government buildings and facilities, schools, and even in public spaces like parks. Cities can really set an example by doing this. And at the same time, you can be boosting your local solar market and saving on electricity bills as well. So I know that deciding where to site a solar project can be complicated, and some of the resources that Nick mentioned earlier can help with that. But we also encourage folks to take the visibility and the educational opportunity of a site into account, which makes schools like this one in New Bedford, Massachusetts, a really great choice. Next slide. The last thing that I want to touch on before passing it off to a few folks who are actually out doing this work in their communities is improving your solar permitting process in order to remove obstacles for individuals and businesses who want to install their own solar projects. So this is going to look familiar to Nicole and Doug. This is a screenshot of the City of West Palm Beach's Solar Initiative's webpage, which actually lists out all of the resources someone would need to install a new solar project in one place. And it also shows that their permit process is expedited for solar projects. So this is kind of a gold standard for permitting that we point to. And I know is one of the reasons that they've been designated a SoleSmart Gold community. So I'm sure Nicole and Doug are going to have a lot more to say about this later and how other cities can emulate it. But the key principles that I want to highlight are that having reduced fees, making your permitting rules really clear and readily available, and making the process as quick and easy as possible. So with that, I want to pass it off to Barb Jackson with the Abita Committee for Energy Sustainability in Abita Springs.
Perfect. Thank you, Emma. Let me unmute Barb. Barb, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm here. And
all right, let me pull up your slides.
Okay.
There we go. It's all yours.
Good. I am here talking to you from Abita Springs, Louisiana. I'm looking out my window at a beautiful sunny day. And for those of you who do not know where Abita Springs is, we are north of Lake Pontchartrain. We're about 35 miles from New Orleans, and we're a very small community, somewhere about 2,500 people working toward 3,000. And we have a goal, and our goal is to obtain all of our electrical energy by 2030 from alternative sources. And for us, there's not much wind around, so that's going to mean solar. And I think it's interesting how things evolve and how did we get to this point. A lot of us in our town were very active in fighting fracking when there was an attempt to drill through our aquifer and start hydraulic fracking. And our mayor, Greg Lemons, was adamantly opposed to it. And he sort of led the fight to not have that happen. And so we got some attention for that. And we were able to have a screening of a Josh Fox movie here in Abita Springs, because I think we've been known for our leading the fight against fracking. And so he came and engaged with the mayor, and they talked about things like solar energy. And that just took off in the mayor's mind. And that's something he wanted to do. So I think we had that original impetus to do something. And just about that time, the Sierra Club came on with its Ready for 100 campaign. And we decided that we wanted to be a part of that. And in order to be a part of that campaign, we had to commit to solar energy. And we took our first baby step with a proclamation. And this didn't involve any input from our Board of Aldermen at all. It was just something that was done at a Board of Aldermen meeting, and that was good. So we kind of got them used to the idea. Next slide. And then from there, we went on to an actual resolution where we resolved to do that by 2030. And that's a little stronger step. And the next step that we probably need to take is actual ordinances. And we're hoping that Environment America can help us craft some of those ordinances where we'll have some teeth behind our goals. But as part of Ready for 100, we then formed a committee. The mayor formed a committee, the ACES Committee for Energy Sustainability, and a group of local citizens, and we're working on moving toward sustainable energy. And we're doing things like we have some outreaches. We've had a forum. Let's see, next slide. Okay, and this is where we actually got into the, this is a record of our progress in the Ready for 100. And so we're beginning to get some national attention. And I think it's this kind of, you just have to have that spark, and really having our mayor behind us has been very helpful. Next slide. Okay, we've had, we're going to have a series of events. This was our first event in 2017, and we had a forum, and we invited all sorts of experts from universities and people in the solar industry, some politicians, members of our board of aldermen, and to dialogue and share all of the information that they had, and to talk about, brainstorm on ways that they can help us. Next slide. And on March 3rd, we had our second event, and this is for our poster for it on March 3rd. And this was for our community, where we had solar installers, and we had organizations who were involved in solar, and our energy companies, and we had an open house at our town hall, and we invited the community to come and learn all about solar. Next slide. Okay. So I think what is really nice is that there are folks along the way. We can have our goal, but we need to be inspired. For example, we want to get a SoleSmart designation. And so we've taken some steps toward that. In a sense, we didn't even have any obstacles. We had nothing. And when we went to the planning and zoning department, we wanted to know what houses had solar. And we were just handed a sheet of paper with a few addresses on it. And so we didn't even have any obstacles. And so what we did, we went to the mayor and we talked to him and told him, well, you know, we can't even find information. And so he talked to planning and zoning, and then they actually came up with a plan and a permitting plan. So we didn't even have a poor permitting plan to fight against. We had to bring one into being. And we have this little map, you can see it there. The only thing we knew is that the historic committee did not want to have any solar panels showing on the fronts of the houses. And so you had to, first of all, you had to find out if you were in the historic district, and you had a map, and I can't even read the map. I can't find my house on the map. So we have a lot of work to do. And so I developed this little sheet of how you would approach getting a permit. And we would not have done that had we not wanted to have a SoleSmart designation and realized quite where we were. We now have a link to what we're doing on our Town of Abita website. So all the things that you have to do to get a designation are really useful, and they move you forward. And I think that's why I'm looking forward to working with Environment America, because there's going to be things that we have to look at, and we'll have to assess ourselves, and it's going to take us further. And so I think that being a little town, and I'm really proud of what we've able to do, and we really have gotten a lot of attention for being a small Republican town in a very Republican state. and also oil and gas state. But I think what our mayor has realized is that a dumb mouse only has one hole, and he's been very open to looking to alternative forms of energy. Are there questions?
Yeah, Barb, I got one question that came through about the goal that was set for the community. Could you please restate what the goal is for Abita Springs?
Yeah, the goal is to have, let's see, let me read it off. Our goal is to obtain 100% of our electric energy for our whole community from alternative sources or solar sources by 2030.
Okay, so it's a 100% clean energy goal by 2030, not just for city-powered buildings, but through the entire community. So that's a community-wide goal.
And I think what we're probably, I know some of the things that we have looked at is solar farms, because we're really in a pine forest. We're heavily treed in Abita Springs, and so we're probably going to need to be looking at some of those other ways of bringing power into our either community solar or solar farms in order to do it for the whole town. But we want to see the whole town powered by solar energy by 2030.
That's a very good story. I really enjoyed the sense of community engagement that was used to establish this goal and hopefully move things forward. Thank you very much, Barb. With that, we will turn to our next set of presenters. We're going to have Nicole Wolf and Doug Harvey from West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm going to unmute them. Should be unmuted. Nicole, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely. Yep. Loud and clear.
All righty.
It's all yours. Just let me know when to advance.
Okay. So just like Abita Springs, we are very fortunate here in the city of West Palm Beach to have a very progressive mayor who is active in our sustainability programs and resiliency measures. So Jerry Muyo, our mayor, had signed on as part of the Global Covenant of Mayors Agreement to lower citywide greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. And in addition to this, Jerry Muyo also signed on to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which established a 100% renewable energy goal for municipal output by 2035. So next slide, please. Sorry. And so we were asking ourselves, why solar energy? Because the cost of solar photovoltaic panel installation has come down dramatically. It's just become a cheaper, more readily available source of energy, and clean, renewable energy at that. So where we're located, we're right on the coast, the east coast of southern Florida. I believe you can see it in that map, but the city of West Palm Beach averages about 5.5 kilowatt hours per square meter per day, which is pretty good, you know, despite our cloudy days sometimes and the occasional hurricane or two. But so we just really want to harness the resources that we already have to reach some of the lofty goals that we've established for ourselves. And next slide, please. All right, so in order to reach our goals, we're definitely investing a lot of time and energy into really developing our solar PV arrays that we have on our municipal buildings. Back in 2011, we had the opening of our lake pavilion. It's kind of like a community center right on the Intracoastal. It has a 17 kilowatt solar array on its roof. And you might be able to see on the right side of that picture, there's another structure called a solar trellis. It's basically just a flat-topped wooden pergola that has an extra 25 kilowatts of solar panels on top of that as well. And so several other measures we've taken to really enhance the cooperation of solar groups with the city. We've worked with Solar United Neighbors of Florida and the League of Women Voters to promote our neighborhood solar co-op. It's an entire group of people from Palm Beach County that the homeowners of Palm Beach County use bulk purchasing power to secure solar PV systems, just rooftop models, but they basically use the bulk purchasing power of those groups to get a discounted rate on solar panel installation, which is awesome. And then we also have our PACE financing program, so people can sign up there and get repaid basically on their assessment on the property's regular tax bill for solar PV panels. And then, of course, our largest chunk of the solar energy puzzle that we're working on right now is our SoleSmart program. And I just started as a sustainability program coordinator back in September of 2017. And at that time, we were already at SoleSmart Bronze, so there wasn't a lot of work to do. But we were still very active in trying to get the rubric for SoleSmart down. We were trying to gather as many points as possible. We were very active in promoting solar energy through our social media postings. We created a solar landing page on our city's website. And of course, we promoted the solar co-ops, and we had a PACE open house program. It was, and there's a press release for our solar co-ops as well, which really helped promote the advancement of solar energy in the city. And then moving on to the next slide, some of our largest steps that we took in order to get from bronze to gold were the changes in our code of ordinances. This was in the zoning and land development regulations chapter of our code of ordinances, and it just incorporated new regulations to clarify solar energy systems as allowable accessory and primary uses. And it basically just cleaned up the language and provided required standards for solar PV systems of different kilowatt sizes. And the last and most important step to get to SoleSmart Gold was our renovated permitting process. And with that, I will turn it over to our solar permit expert, Doug Harvey.
Thank you, Nicole, and good afternoon, everyone. This process, in order to accomplish this, one of the things that we realized early on is you have to take a step back, and you've got to take a look at all of your processes very openly and very honestly. In order to do that, we actually involved industry as well, asked industry, what is it you would like to see from us? What is it that we are doing that's actually putting hurdles in the way? And what are you finding in other places that works or doesn't work? And we kind of analyzed all of that. In conjunction with that, we utilized a lot of the documentation from IREC, the Renewable Energies Council, and from Bill Brooks. We have had a couple of conversations with Bill discussing things that we did. He was very helpful, as was the technical assistance from SoleSmart. It'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jen Barinholtz's assistance with this, because she coordinated a lot and kind of kept me on track when I started to slide. So we found out we did have some issues to address, not the least of which was we needed to get cooperation between planning and zoning and building And even within the building department themselves, we needed to get cooperation between electrical and building inspectors and plan reviewers. So we started working on all of this. We started coordinating things, taking a look at what are the important pieces and parts of this. Those of you that are in areas where you have licensing, whether the licensing is of your contractors, of your inspectors, your plan reviewers, whatever it may be, you have to be cognizant of that and make a determination. It was our determination that the actual attachment of the solar panels is something that is directly related to the solar panels. Therefore, the solar contractor is permitted to do that, and the electrical inspector is permitted to inspect that. So we did some in-house training. There was a lot of discussion on that. And before we could even get to that part of it, one of the things we realized was we needed to address the zoning issue. So we met with the zoning department about the PV panels, and you've heard comments, yeah, we don't allow them on the street side, or they can't be visible, or whatever the cases may be that people always talk about. It's the kind of the NIMBY philosophy. Everybody wants to go 100% alternative, but not in my backyard, or not in my front yard, I guess would be the case in this particular instance. So we met with zoning. We came up with some requirements, I guess is the best way to say it. We came up with some guidelines whereby we could go ahead and we instituted a walkthrough program on a trial basis that we plan to expand. For right now, we have a system where a 10 kW or less residential roof-mounted system, if a contractor will fill out the checklists and guides that we have posted for them, which asks all of the specific questions that need to be answered, if they can answer those questions in the manner that's required, and we give them guidance throughout the form. All of the forms are posted on our website if you want to take a look at them. They can walk in the door, they will sit down with an electrical plan reviewer, and we can let them walk out of the building with a permit. Zoning has agreed that as long as we comply with the guidelines that they've given us, we can bypass the zoning review on these systems. So that saved us about a week of review time for getting permits out, and brought the timeline down for about 20 minutes for a contractor to be able to walk in the door and walk out with a permit in their hand. In addition to that, we looked at what the cost was and said, well, if our cost for going over the counter, somebody walking in the door and walking out, only takes 20 to 30 minutes, what should the cost be on that? And then what kind of inspections are we going to do? And we got it down to the point that we do 2 inspections on that particular type of a system. And that is an in progress and a final inspection. So we base the fee on that information. We're in the process of going back to the commission to ask for just a flat fee of $450 for these systems so that we can get them in, get them out, and get people online with their systems. We've done and are doing training in-house. The system is working well. Information is posted on our website. One of the other important things is that we had administration buy-in on this, which is crucial to the success of the program. The program is being utilized. I was actually on the front counter yesterday as one of these got issued yesterday afternoon. It took the 17 and a half minutes to get it done, so the program is working. And with that, I'll shut up, turn it back over to Nicole.
Well, that pretty much just wraps up our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions that have arisen.
We'll actually take some Q&A once we wrap up all the presenters.
Sure.
So I'll let you know what comes through.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. With that, I am going to unmute Edith and Mayor Ostenberg and get their slides ready to go. Edith, can you hear me?
We can. How's that sound there?
You sound great. Let me know when to advance the slides.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm John Austenberg. I'm the mayor of Park Forest, Illinois. But today I'm talking to you in my capacity as chair for the Environment Committee for the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. And I think probably the first thing we need to do is kind of make you aware of what the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus is, because we're talking about a collaboration of a number of different communities. Advance the slide, please. It's a regional council of governments that includes the city of Chicago, but then around the crescent of the city is in fact 270 municipalities that constitute the caucus, along with the city of Chicago. There are 10 sub-regions that are councils of government, and each one of the councils of government participates in the caucus. Each council of government has 2 representatives on our our executive board, and the executive board actually makes decisions that address common problems within the caucus communities. We also have a number of committees, one of which is the Environment Committee, and the Environment Committee has been at work on a number of different projects, but they kind of center on what we call the Greenest Region Compact, and this is a sustainability consensus that establishes goals in 10 specific areas, and they include climate, economic development, energy, land, leadership, mobility, municipal operations. Advance slide, please. I get ahead of myself here. And sustainable communities, water, and waste. These operations, the goals that have been set have now been signed on to, advance slide please, by 70 different communities within the Chicago region. Each one of those little green dots represents a community that is signed on to our Greenest Region Compact. They do so by formally adopting it by resolution at the municipal level, and it helps us to work collaboratively in addressing the goals that we have for the region. So Edith is going to give some of the framework for how we do that.
Sure. And next slide, please, Nick. I'm Edith Macra. I'm the Director of Environmental Initiatives at the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. When we put together the Greenest Region Compact, we actually did it through an analysis of what communities are already doing, and this is really a compilation of all of the existing sustainability plans that we had. So we had this rich set of data, but we wanted a simple compact. So the compact that the previous slide showed that Mayor Austenberg talked about is that's 2 pages of high-level goals. We had all these specific objectives, and we put them into a framework which supports the achievement of those goals. We don't require municipalities to, to tackle any set of them, and we don't do reporting on it right now. But what it is a framework for municipalities that might want to do their own sustainability plan. And the reason that I put up the energy page here is the Greenest Region Compact, if you will, those high-level goals are in the pink column over to the left. And the 2 high-level goals that our communities agreed to is to advance renewable energy and then to enact policies that support clean energy. And if you look at those circles that we have, those ovals for E13A and E25A, we had sitting, waiting in our Greenest Region Compact framework, the desire to work on codes and permitting processes and adapting building and zoning codes. We were just sitting, waiting for SoleSmart to come into our lives. So that's where we're going with the story here is that we had all these communities on board with the goals. Our framework, then, Nick, if you want to tap the slide, it should animate a little bit. So with those 2, with that arrow that just came in, we're ready to go with the SoleSmart cohort. And the moral of our story here is that our regional collaboration allowed us to really hit our stride with SoleSmart and the Greenest Region Compact. And Nick, if you could tap one more time. Also, many wonderful opportunities coming together here. We also had a very significant piece of legislation that passed in Illinois. It took effect last January. Illinois does not have a very strong solar market. I think we're 30th in the country for solar. The Future Energy Jobs Act is looking at solar investment in a number of different ways. that overall is looking to bring about $650 million for solar and fix our renewable portfolio standards. So next slide, Nick, if you would. Okay. So in addition to having this tremendous fertile ground, if you will, for SoleSmart, we had, as Mayor Ostenberg said, we had an environment committee that tackled lots of things. We had a meeting wanting to explore solar, and in anticipation, not even before the Future Energy Jobs Act passed, we actually had a meeting at our Illinois Brotherhood of Electrical Workers training facility, which had a training facility for solar, and we went on a tour there. We had a great turnout and a great time, and the Illinois Solar Energy Association joined us and said, you know, working with you municipalities, we could really use your help on solar. So we had that, you know, seed planted in our minds that we should do something with this. And then, of course, once the Future Energy Jobs Act passed, we were well underway in terms of our relationship with SoleSmart. And what I like about SoleSmart is that it really plays to our municipal strengths. With this excitement over the Future Energy Jobs Act, and they're anticipating like a 2,000% increase in the solar market, there's a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of things that we are being asked to do as the Mayor's Caucus. And when SoleSmart came along, it seemed to be such a natural fit. We had already heard from the industry that this was an important place for us to spend our time and efforts, and it's something that we know how to do at municipalities. We certainly know our codes processes, permitting, and then we do very well with community outreach as well. And just a shout out to the SoleSmart program, we found that to be such a wonderful partner for us in terms of providing support for us to go forward and make this happen for our communities. So I was trained as an advisor with SoleSmart, and they have been terrific in terms of providing resources for us to work collaboratively with our cohort, providing regular support. And the scorecard that Nick was talking about at the very beginning is a pathway that's very clear in terms of the step. If you earn SoleSmart designation, we feel like you're really ready for solar development. So we like the program a lot. Next slide, please.
So this slide kind of illustrates our cohort. These are the participants. The communities that participated were of varying sizes from within the caucus. We ended up with a total of 12 municipalities, plus 3 of the counties that are in the area of the caucus also participated. And at the conclusion of the process, we had 7 bronze recipients, 3 silver recipients, and 5 gold recipients. This ceremony that took place where these awards were presented was at Argonne National Laboratory, which is a major facility that's located here in the Chicagoland region, and it was very well attended. One of our local congressmen, who happens to be a PhD in science, was there to assist us, along with the lieutenant governor of the state. The awards were presented to the various representatives of the communities that were involved, and I think that it got us a lot of very positive publicity on what municipalities are doing to advance solar energy in our region. Excellent press coverage, and I think all of the communities that were involved were just extremely proud of the fact that they had gotten this designation. Mm-hmm. So, Edith, you want to...
Next slide, Nick. And so what you saw was that happy picture of our end result. The behind the scenes, you know, because we were the largest cohort within the SoleSmart program, and the size of our cohort even changed over time. We had communities that had joined and dropped out, and then we had a few added in, and I think we had one community, we've been working with SoleSmart for 4 months, and we had one community finish in about, Charles, 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. They really cranked to get it done. So Charles on our team here was herding cats to get everybody to do all their homework. And so this was a public-facing version of that checklist that Nick showed you in the beginning. We wanted to be able to answer the question at that press event, you know, what have my communities done, or what have your communities done? So rather than calling out one community for, hey, here's an example of what we did, we took economies of scale, if you will, and working as an advisor, SoleSmart advisor for the entire cohort, we did some things together that really enabled broad participation and basically for our communities to get points. So I know this chart is very detailed and a little hard to read, but I have pointed out two arrows. So if you will, the number of communities across the top that achieve that designation. If you go to the totals column, that will show you the ones that we've all done together that were really strong. And of course, communities did their own thing as well as they were able to. But I just wanted to pick one that showed, the strength of collaboration, and that's in the gray section there on community engagement. Participation in the regional goal setting is a SoleSmart objective, and we did that together. So what we did, and it was Mayor Ostenberg's recommendation, is we were looking at the Future Energy Jobs Act swirling around. Do you want to talk about that for the clean energy agenda? The clean energy agenda, yes. So as all the discussion about the Future Energy Jobs Act was swirling around, we wanted to get clarity. Go ahead.
So we actually established an energy subcommittee for the Environment Committee, and then engaged in hiring an expert who came in and gave us some clear guidance on some of the things that we needed to do. From that, we developed our system for how we're going forward.
And we put out formally what our goals were for solar, our participation. We said as a caucus, we support solar, and then all of the our 10-member councils of governments adopted the clean energy agenda, and in it were very specific goals for solar. So that's one example where we really were able to leverage the power of the cohort and the power of us working with communities, lots of communities in this large of a cohort. One other very practical one, which we were able to do for all of the communities, there's one of the SoleSmart criteria is to review solar permit fees in your region and set best practices. So what we were able to do here at the caucus is we actually, because we had such a large cohort, we set up a survey and asked all of our municipalities to answer what their permitting fees were. We compiled that, and that accounted, we did the survey together, and every community then got credit for reviewing permit fees. So one thing we were able to do to just leverage a lot.
And I think that collaboration really was a key point here, because at least one of our mayors, a much smaller community, mentioned to me that he had never thought that his community would end up getting a SoleSmart designation. But the fact that we were able to do this in a collective fashion with all the assistance that the caucus gave to the communities, it made the difference. So, I think kind of shows that there's a lot that you can do when you work together.
Right. And the last slide. Got that bragging line? So. We were told by SoleSmart that when we had our cohort of 15 graduate, if you will, get designated, that we're #1 state in the country for SoleSmart designations, and we have beat out some very solar states like California and Colorado. So we are proud of that. We just wanted to. It's not bragging.
It's not bragging if it's the truth.
If it's the truth. And that's everything.
I can confirm that that's still an accurate statement, that the area in and around Chicago does have the highest cluster of SoleSmart designated communities in the country right now.
Awesome.
Very good.
So congratulations to you both there for all your hard work, and all the designated communities in the northern Illinois region did a lot of great work there. So I'm going to pause for a moment and let any questions come through the chat feature. Unfortunately, we only have about a minute or two, so we may only be able to get to 1 or 2 questions. Any questions that I'm not able to answer on the webinar right now, I will answer myself or send it to the correct speaker so they're able to answer your question. And with that, I actually wanted to go back to Emma. Let me make sure I unmute you and simply ask, I think all of what we've seen here kind of to a point starts with goal setting we learned about different programs and resources available to local governments. We talked about community engagement and goal setting. We saw that in Abita Springs. Within West Palm Beach, we saw the importance of having buy-in across staff within the local government, and then they were able to really put forth some process and regulatory improvements. And then through the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, we really saw the importance of regional approach, the importance of collaboration, and how standardizing that amongst multiple communities can really help out. But Emma, in terms of all of this, kind of where do you begin, and who are all the important stakeholders to have at the table when discussing these types of topics and goals?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Nick. I think in terms of where to begin, we, in any goal, but especially in solar goals, encourage beginning with community support, and that you want to build and demonstrate support among your actual constituents and community members behind moving forward on solar. I think some of the things that Abita Springs did towards the beginning of their 100% renewable energy goal are perfect examples of that. And there are certainly other ways to engage your community too. So we would encourage that. There are certainly ways to work with organizations like ours and others too to kind of amplify all of that community support. And then of course you want to engage, just like Abita Springs did, the solar companies and industries in your community, as well as businesses and any other major stakeholders who are going to be impacted by your goals, and make sure that there's buy-in in those goals from across your community.
Excellent, thank you. Definitely the importance of stakeholder engagement and collaboration to achieve any of these goals, and ideally improve local solar markets, making it more affordable and accessible for homes and businesses to install solar. Hope you learned something on today's webinar. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for their participation. And with that, we'll be concluding today's webinar. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.